Located in the northwest corner of Illinois lies the quaint village of Elizabeth. In the heart of Elizabeth is Hoskins Building Center. Hoskins was established in 1854 by William Hoskins. At the time, the small business didn't seem to have much significance. With the railroad nearby, it was easy for Hoskins to come across the materials essential to run the business. Materials that once arrived by rail and were delivered by horse and wagon now come and go by semis, trailers, and trucks. The owners may have changed, but the business still thrives today. At that time, no one knew the Hoskins would become the building blocks of Elizabeth. A man by the name of William Hoskins came from Cornwall, England to Joe Davis County in 1847. 2 years later, he packed his things and left for California to seek fortune in the gold rush. After a few years, he became very wealthy and returned to Joe Davis County.
Lumberyard was started in 1854, and it was started with gold rush money. William Hoskins was a lead miner in this area, and when they hit gold in California, he was one of many from this area that went to California to seek his fortune. He was one of the more fortunate ones, as I understand it, to come back with some gold, and with that he started the first lumberyard.
He used his newly found riches to establish Hoskins Building Center in 1854 near Apple River, Illinois. It wasn't until 34 years later that the yard in Elizabeth was founded. 2 more yards were created 9 years later in Cuba City, Wisconsin, and Galena, Illinois. The businesses of Cuba City and Galena shut down, and only the building center of Elizabeth was left.
It started in Galena in 1854. They eventually had 4 lumber yards, one in Apple River, one in Cuba City, one in Elizabeth, and Galena.
The first manager of Elizabeth was John Coveney. During Mr. Coveney's time as manager, William Hoskins passed away and left his business to his son-in-law, Eugene Montgomery. When Mr. Coveney stepped down as manager, his son, Edmund Coveney, became the new manager. After Eugene Montgomery's death, he left Hoskins to his daughter, Mrs. Harriet Priestley. Mrs. Priestley realized how big of a job owning Hoskins really was, so Edmund Coveney helped out Mrs. Priestley, and together they became co-owners of Hoskins. The business was then handed over to Mrs. Priestley's daughter, Mrs. Kate Sherman, who appointed Willis J. Evans as manager in 1933. Even though the owners and managers continuously changed, Hoskins still continues to thrive. As people migrated west, some decided to call this small town their new home. With everyone moving to town, there were too many people and not enough places to live. Hoskins was conveniently located in the middle of Elizabeth, which made it the prime source for building homes, so as the town grew, so did the business. Because there were new people moving to town, Hoskins needed to be able to get supplies quickly and efficiently. When they started out, they got their supplies from ships traveling up the Galena River.
At that point, they would bring up their lumber in barges up the Mississippi and then up the Galena River, something called the Fever River at the time. The whole year's worth would come up on barge from the south, from St. Louis.
In 1860, Mr. R. Norris offered for the lumber to be stored in his home near the river in Galena. That house was later sold to the father of the famous war hero, U.S. Grant. The development of the railroad system proved to be much quicker for transporting supplies than the use of the river. Shipments of coal from the railroad were unloaded and sold to Hoskins. If it wasn't for the railroad, Hoskins wouldn't have been so successful. The business of Hoskins really took off with the grand opening under the new owner, Vince Tepfer.
From 1974 to 2002, I owned Hoskins Lumber. We went under the name Hoskins Building Center most of the time. I bought it when I was 23. I didn't know anything about the business, so it was a learning experience.
Vince brought a variety of ideas to the table, including the creation of the cartoon Splinters. This short, fat, pipe-smoking, and overall-wearing man became the new face of Hoskins. He came up with Splinters to give Hoskins a more personal feel. One of the sayings that went along with Splinters is, "The coffee pot is always on," and it made Hoskins seem more inviting.
We had a little cartoon character early on in our career. We call them Splinters. It was just an idea of a way to brand the business, to set yourself apart. This character kind of resembled my father with his pipe and pot belly, so it was kind of fun.
The goal of bringing in new customers to Hoskins surpassed its expectations. With the continuous growth of the business, Hoskins had to expand their inventory. The grand reopening in 1974 brought a variety of customers because of the new inventory available. He also did a lot of remodeling in and outside of the buildings. He painted the outside of the buildings white and updated the inside, giving Hoskins a fresh new look. In this rural area, the Astro buildings were very useful for barns, machinery storage, garages, dairy barns, and poultry houses.
We had offered Astro buildings, and the most important thing was our wood foundations, treated wood foundations. We sold somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 of those throughout the Midwest. And updating Hoskins, we added buildings, we added forklifts, we added trucks, and most important thing is computers. We actually computerized years before anyone else in the area did. We were computerized before the lumberyards in Dubuque were computerized.
Little did Vince know that his current manager, Eric Wheelwright, would become the new owner of Hoskins. After working at Hoskins for 13 years, Eric and his wife Pam purchased Hoskins on July 26, 2002.
I decided to purchase Hoskins because after working here for 13 years and managing it for about 5 years, that the previous owner was wanting to sell it, and I was ready to purchase it and move on as an owner and to help try to grow the business and continue to serve the community the way we had in the past.
Business grew even more because of the company's commitment to quality that is witnessed by a long list of loyal contractors. Not only was the business providing to many people in Joe Davis County, they also began to sell the materials to Dubuque, Iowa, Madison, Wisconsin, and Chicago, Illinois. Then in March of 2006, Hoskins expanded their inventory to include kitchen and bathroom designing. This part of the business inventory excelled because a lot of the houses were becoming old and outdated. When the idea of the showroom started out, it didn't have much importance.
We felt it was important for my job to focus on kitchen and bath design and sales. At that time, we didn't have anyone dedicated to selling kitchens, so that became my responsibility. At that time, it was a big deal if Hoskins even sold one kitchen a year, and so just simply having someone focused on selling and designing kitchens, that part of the business really took off.
But with the high demand, the showroom was forced to relocate to the newly vacated building across the street. With the new showroom being in its own building, it was able to expand and surpass all of Eric and Pam's expectations. The showroom expanded Hoskins' clientele and took the business to a whole new level.
So we noticed the building across the street from the lumberyard was for rent. We approached the owner, asked her if she'd be willing to sell the building, and in August of 2005 she agreed to sell it to us. And by March of 2006, we had added another designer to our staff as well as an appliance salesperson. And by March of 2006, the 2,800 square foot showroom was open and ready for business.
Because of the recession in 2008, many small businesses struggled to remain open. Due to the closing of the local hardware and grocery store, Hoskins decided to incorporate more household and hardware items in their inventory. Since Hoskins was taking on a wide variety of products, they decided to add on to the store. In September of 2012, Hoskins had its grand reopening of the new and improved store. With all the clients and inventory, there is no doubt Hoskins will be around for many years to come.
In today's busy world, customers really do like one-stop shopping. They want to be able to get everything for their project in one place if they can, and now we are able to offer that.
Since Hoskins' original opening in 1854, it has had great success in many different fields. Hoskins may have started out as just a lumber company, but through hard work and dedication, they were able to incorporate kitchen and bathroom designing, hardware materials, and some appliances into their inventory. Even though Hoskins has changed hands, it has never affected the quality of service displayed by the employees or the products sold. The commitment of all the past owners has allowed Hoskins to thrive much longer than it was expected to. It is now the oldest business in Joe Davis County and the second oldest lumber company in the state. Hoskins plans to keep building off of what they already have, keeping their customers satisfied. Hoskins has a great impact on the town of Elizabeth.
The impact today at Hoskins is very important. They are one of our biggest sales tax providers for the village that help fund the village of Elizabeth. The village of Elizabeth as a whole sells about $10 million worth of goods, which is pretty impressive for a town of 762. And Hoskins' share of that $10 million worth of goods is significant, so they're extremely important today as they provide a lot of tax revenue to the village to help us operate. They also employ, I think, 7 full-time people, so they're one of the bigger job providers in the area too.
Hoskins Building Center has proven to be the building blocks of Elizabeth.